I thought I knew my sister. Growing up, we shared everything. Secrets whispered under blankets at midnight, dreams about our future weddings, promises that we would always have each other's backs. But standing in her apartment that Tuesday evening, watching her pull away from my boyfriend with guilt smeared across her face like cheap lipstick, I realized I had been sharing my life with a stranger. The wedding invitation sat on her counter. 7 days. She was getting married in 7 days, and she had just kissed the man I loved. Before we dive into what happened next, I would love to know where you are watching this from. Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you have ever dealt with betrayal from someone you trusted completely, hit that like button and subscribe, because you are going to want to hear how this story ends. Trust me, what her fiancé did at that wedding left everyone speechless. My name is Sarah, and I had been dating Joel for 2 years. We met at a photography exhibit downtown. I was there for work. He was there because he actually appreciated art, and we ended up standing in front of the same black and white portrait for so long that the security guard asked if we were okay. Joel had this way of seeing beauty in things other people overlooked. He noticed the freckle on my left wrist that I had always hated. He remembered that I took my coffee with oat milk because regular milk made me feel sluggish. He was the kind of person who paid attention, who made you feel like you mattered. My sister Natalie was 3 years older than me and had always been the golden child. Straight A student captain of the debate team, full scholarship to an Ivy League school. She worked in corporate law now, pulling in a salary that made our parents beam with pride at every family dinner. Her fiancé, Christopher, was exactly the kind of man you would expect her to end up with. Partner at an investment firm, drove a Tesla, owned a condo in the nice part of town. They had been together for 4 years, and their relationship seemed as polished and perfect as everything else in Natalie's life. I introduced Joel to my family about 6 months into our relationship. We had Sunday dinner at my parents' house, and Natalie and Christopher were there too. I remember feeling nervous, wanting everyone to get along, hoping my family would see what I saw in Joel. He was not a lawyer or an investment banker. He managed a small vintage bookstore and did freelance photography on the side. He wore thrift store blazers and read poetry. He was different from the men in my family's usual orbit, and I worried they would not understand. But everyone was warm and welcoming. Natalie hugged Joel like they were old friends. Christopher shook his hand with that firm grip important men always use. My mother loved that Joel complimented her cooking with specific details about the seasoning. My father appreciated that Joel asked thoughtful questions about his work. The evening felt like a success. I went home that night, holding Joel's hand, thinking about how lucky I was to have a family that embraced the person I loved. Over the next year and a half, we all spent time together regularly. Holiday gatherings, birthday dinners, the occasional double date when Christopher and Natalie wanted to try some new restaurant they had read about. Natalie and I talked on the phone twice a week like we always had. She asked about my job at the marketing agency. I asked about her cases. She told me about wedding planning stress. I listened and offered advice. When she asked me to be her maid of honor, I cried happy tears and said yes immediately. The wedding was set for June 12th. Natalie had been planning it for over a year, and she approached it with the same intensity she brought to everything else. She had spreadsheets for seating arrangements, color-coded timelines, a binder 3 inches thick with vendor contracts, and inspiration photos. She texted me pictures of centerpiece options at 11 at night. She called me in panic when the calligrapher misspelled a guest's name. I showed up for every dress fitting, every cake tasting, every moment she needed me. Because that is what sisters do. Joel was invited to the wedding, of course. He was my +1, and by that point he had become part of the family. He helped my father set up the projector for the rehearsal dinner slideshow. He made my mother laugh with stories from the bookstore. He fit into my life so seamlessly that I had started imagining our own wedding, wondering if he was thinking the same thing. 2 weeks before Natalie's wedding, she asked if I could stop by her apartment to help her with some DIY project for the reception. She wanted to make these small, succulent favors for each table, and she claimed she needed an extra pair of hands. I said sure, told Joel I would see him later that evening, and drove over after work. When I arrived, Natalie seemed distracted. She kept checking her phone, glancing at the door, rearranging the supplies on her dining table, without actually starting the project. I asked if she was okay, and she said she was just stressed about last-minute details. Her hands were shaking slightly as she lined up the tiny terracotta pots. Then, someone knocked. Natalie jumped up so fast she nearly knocked over the bag of potting soil. She told me she had ordered lunch and went to get the door. But it was not a delivery person. It was Joel. I stared at him standing in the doorway, confused. He looked just as surprised to see me. He said Natalie had texted him, asking if he could stop by to help move some boxes of wedding supplies from her storage unit. He thought I would be at work. I said I was supposed to be helping with succulent favors. We both turned to look at Natalie, who had gone completely pale. She stammered something about getting her signals crossed, about thinking I was coming later, about how she had forgotten she asked Joel to help with the storage unit. The excuse was flimsy and awkward, but I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe my sister was just overwhelmed and disorganized, not that something else was happening. Joel offered to leave and come back another time, but Natalie insisted we were all there now, so we might as well all work together. The afternoon was tense and strange. Natalie kept asking Joel questions about his photography, leaning in too close when he showed her something on his phone, touching his arm when she laughed. I tried to ignore the sick feeling growing in my stomach. When we finished, Joel left first. He kissed my cheek and said he would pick me up at 7 for dinner. After he was gone, I confronted Natalie. I asked her point blank if something was going on. She looked me dead in the eye and told me I was being paranoid. She said wedding stress was making me see problems where there were none. She hugged me and apologized for being scattered. I wanted so badly to believe her that I pushed my doubts down and pretended everything was fine. But I could not shake the feeling. Over the next week, I noticed small things. Natalie mentioned something Joel had told her about a photography client, but he had never mentioned that client to me. She knew he was thinking about expanding the bookstore's poetry section before I did. Little pieces of information that suggested they were talking more than I realized. I checked his phone one night while he was in the shower. I hated myself for doing it, but I had to know. There were texts from Natalie. Nothing explicitly inappropriate, but there were too many of them. Good morning messages, funny memes, inside jokes I was not part of, a familiarity that felt wrong. When I asked Joel about it, he said Natalie had been reaching out more because she wanted to get to know him better since we were getting serious. He said she was just being a good sister, trying to welcome him into the family. He seemed genuinely confused by my concern, which made me feel crazy and controlling. So I apologized and tried to let it go. The Tuesday before the wedding, Natalie called me in tears. She said she had a huge fight with Christopher about the honeymoon itinerary, and she needed to talk. Could I please come over? I was exhausted from work and had plans to cook dinner with Joel, but she was my sister, and she was crying, so I said yes. I told Joel I had to cancel our evening plans. He was understanding, told me to take care of Natalie, and said we could have dinner another night. I grabbed my keys and headed to her apartment. When I got there, Natalie was not crying. She was standing in her kitchen drinking wine, completely calm. I asked about the fight with Christopher, and she waved it off like it was nothing. Said they had already worked it out. I felt a spike of irritation. I had canceled my plans and rushed over for a crisis that apparently resolved itself in the 20 minutes it took me to drive there. But I stayed. We poured more wine. We talked about the wedding, about her nerves, about how strange it felt that she was actually getting married. The conversation was normal and sister-like, and I started to relax. Maybe I had been paranoid. Maybe the stress of watching her plan this massive event had made me imagine problems. Then, her door opened, and Joel walked in. He stopped when he saw me. The expression on his face was pure shock. Natalie turned red, and the wine glass nearly slipped from her hand. I looked between them, my brain trying to process what was happening. Joel said Natalie had texted him saying she needed help assembling some furniture for the guest room before the wedding. He showed me his phone. There was the text sent an hour ago, right around the time she called me crying about a fake fight. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and I saw the truth written all over her guilty face. I asked them both to explain what the hell was going on. Joel said there was nothing going on, that Natalie had just asked for help, and he had said yes. But his voice had an edge to it, defensive and uncomfortable. Natalie was silent, staring at the floor. I said I was leaving. I grabbed my purse and walked toward the door. Behind me, I heard Joel tell Natalie this was a bad idea. I heard her whisper something I could not make out. I should have kept walking. But something made me stop just outside the door. Something made me stay quiet and listen. Natalie's voice came through clearly. She said she could not keep pretending. She said she knew it was wrong, but she could not help how she felt. And then, I heard movement, and I turned back just in time to see my sister kiss my boyfriend. It was not a long kiss. Maybe 3 seconds. But it was intentional and mutual, and it shattered everything I thought I knew. Joel pulled away first. He saw me standing there, and the color drained from his face. Natalie turned, and her hand flew to her mouth. For a moment, nobody moved. We were all frozen in this horrible tableau of betrayal. Then I ran. I got in my car and drove, not even sure where I was going. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely grip the steering wheel. I ended up parked outside a grocery store, sobbing in the darkness, while confused shoppers pushed carts past my car. Joel called 12 times. I did not answer. Natalie called 6 times. I did not answer her either. Finally, she sent a text. It said, "Please, Sarah, we need to talk." It was a mistake. Please do not do anything crazy. The wedding is in 7 days. That text made everything clear. She was not worried about hurting me. She was worried about her perfect wedding getting ruined. I did not sleep that night. I sat on my couch replaying every interaction, every moment I had dismissed as paranoia. The way Natalie touched Joel's arm. The inside jokes. The 2 frequent texts. How long had this been building? How many times had they been alone together while I trusted them both? Joel showed up at my apartment at 6 in the morning. I let him in because I needed answers. He swore it was the first time anything physical had happened. He said Natalie had been reaching out to him for months, that at first it seemed innocent, just friendly conversation. But then it became more frequent, more personal. He admitted he liked the attention. He admitted he should have told me. He said the kiss was a terrible mistake, and it would never happen again. I asked him if he had feelings for her. He hesitated too long before saying no, and that hesitation told me everything. I told him to leave. He tried to argue, to explain, to promise he would fix this. But there was nothing to fix. The trust was gone. I could never look at him again without seeing that kiss. He finally left, and I locked the door behind him, feeling emptier than I had ever felt in my life. Natalie started blowing up my phone around 8. Calls, texts, voice messages. All of them begging me not to tell Christopher. Saying it was a horrible mistake, made worse by wedding stress and too much wine. Promising it would never happen again. Asking me to please not ruin her big day. Her big day. Like that was what mattered. Not that she had betrayed me with my boyfriend. Not that she had been lying to me for months. Just that her expensive, carefully planned wedding might get disrupted. I did not respond. I called in sick to work and spent the day thinking. Part of me wanted to keep the secret. To protect her the way sisters are supposed to protect each other. To avoid the nuclear explosion that would happen if I told the truth. But another part of me, a part that was growing stronger by the hour, knew that Christopher deserved to know who he was marrying. He deserved to make an informed choice about whether to go through with this wedding, and Natalie deserved consequences for what she had done. I made my decision on Thursday. I went to Christopher's office. I did not call ahead because I knew if I gave myself time to reconsider, I might lose my nerve. I just showed up and asked the receptionist if I could see him. She looked confused, but picked up the phone. A few minutes later, Christopher came out to the lobby. He smiled when he saw me, gave me a hug, asked what brought me by. I told him we needed to talk privately. The smile faded. He led me back to his office and closed the door. I told him everything. The weird texts, the too close moments, walking in on them kissing. I showed him screenshots I had taken of Natalie's messages begging me to stay quiet. I watched his face change as the reality sank in. Confusion, then hurt, then anger, then something that looked like grief. He asked if I was sure about what I had seen. I said yes. He asked if Joel had admitted to having feelings for Natalie. I said he had not denied it when I asked. Christopher sat down heavily in his desk chair and put his head in his hands. We sat in silence for a long time. Then he thanked me for telling him. He said he needed time to think about what to do. I told him I was sorry for bringing this to him so close to the wedding, but I could not let him marry her without knowing. He nodded and said he understood. I left his office with no idea what would happen next. Natalie called me that evening screaming. Christopher had confronted her. She called me every name she could think of. She said I had destroyed her life out of jealousy and spite. She said I had always been bitter about her success, and this was my revenge. She said I was dead to her. I hung up and blocked her number. Then I blocked Joel's number too. I was done with both of them. My parents called the next day. Natalie had told them some twisted version where I was trying to sabotage her wedding because I was jealous. They asked me to please just let this go, to work it out after the wedding to not cause family drama. I told them the truth. There was a long silence. Then my mother asked if I was absolutely certain about what I had seen. When I said yes, she started crying. Saturday arrived. The wedding was scheduled for 4 p.m. at a vineyard an hour outside the city. I had no idea if it was still happening. No one had contacted me. I assumed I was uninvited either way, but part of me wanted to know how this ended. At noon, I got a text from an unknown number. It was Christopher. It said, "The wedding is happening. I think you should be there." I wore a simple navy dress and drove to the vineyard. My stomach was in knots the entire way. When I arrived, guests were already gathering. I recognized aunts and uncles, family friends, Natalie's law school colleagues. Everyone was dressed beautifully, chatting and laughing, completely unaware of the chaos beneath the surface. I found a seat in the back row. My parents were up front and did not see me come in. Natalie's bridesmaids were lined up near the arbor, where the ceremony would take place, all wearing pale pink and holding bouquets of white roses. I was supposed to be standing with them. Instead, I was hiding in the back like a stranger. The music started. Guests stood. Natalie appeared at the end of the aisle on my father's arm. She looked stunning in a fitted lace gown with a long train. Her makeup was perfect. Her smile was radiant. She looked like every bride's dream of herself. She walked down the aisle, and I watched Christopher's face. He was not smiling. He looked calm but serious, and there was something in his eyes I could not read. Natalie reached the front. My father kissed her cheek and sat down. The officiant began speaking about love and commitment and partnership. The standard wedding script. I felt sick. Then Christopher held up his hand. The officiant stopped mid-sentence. The crowd went silent. Natalie looked confused. Christopher turned to face the guests. He said he had something he needed to say before they went any further. Natalie's face went white. She grabbed his arm and whispered something, but he gently pulled away. He said he believed marriage should be built on honesty and trust. He said that over the past few days, he had learned some things that made him question whether those foundations existed in this relationship. Natalie was shaking her head, tears starting to stream down her face. She kept saying his name, pleading. Christopher said he had discovered that Natalie had been emotionally involved with someone else, that she had kissed this person less than a week before their wedding, that when confronted, her first concern was not the betrayal itself, but making sure it did not interfere with this event. The crowd erupted in gasps and whispers. Natalie was sobbing now, reaching for him. He stepped back. She tried to explain, to say it was a mistake, that she loved him, that none of it meant anything. Her voice was desperate and broken. Christopher said he had spent the last 2 days deciding what to do. He could call off the wedding and humiliate her in front of everyone. He could go through with it and spend the rest of his life wondering if she truly loved him, or if she just loved the life he could give her. Or he could do something different. He said he was going to give her a choice. They could end this right now, cancel the wedding and go their separate ways. Or they could postpone, spend the next 6 months in serious couples counseling, rebuilding trust, and figuring out if this relationship was worth saving. If after 6 months they both still wanted to get married, they would. But it would be a small ceremony. No expensive production. Just 2 people making a genuine commitment. The crowd was dead silent. Every single person was staring at Natalie, waiting for her response. She looked at Christopher, then at the guests, then at the elaborate setup she had spent over a year planning. The flowers, the arch, the string quartet, the reception tent in the distance. Her perfect day. She said she wanted to postpone. She said she would do the counseling. She said she wanted to fight for them. Christopher nodded. He told the officiant they were done. He thanked the guests for coming and apologized for the disruption. Then, he walked back down the aisle alone, got in his car and drove away. Natalie collapsed. Her bridesmaids rushed to her side. My mother ran up from the front row. The guests started filing out, some looking sympathetic, others looking scandalized and eager to gossip. It was chaos. I slipped out quietly and went home. I did not hear from anyone for 3 days. Then my mother called. She said Natalie was devastated, but agreed she had brought this on herself. She said Christopher was serious about the counseling requirement. She said my father was disappointed in Natalie, in a way she had never seen before. She asked how I was doing. I told her I was surviving, taking things one day at a time. She said she was sorry for not believing me at first, for asking me to stay quiet. She said she understood now why I had told Christopher. We talked for an hour, and it felt like the first honest conversation we had in months. That was 8 months ago. Natalie and Christopher did go to counseling. I heard through my mother that it has been difficult, but they are working through things. They have not set a new wedding date. Natalie has reached out twice, asking if we can talk. I have not responded yet. I am not sure I ever will. Joel tried to contact me for weeks after everything happened. Apology texts, emails, even a handwritten letter delivered to my apartment. I never replied. Eventually he stopped. I heard from a mutual friend that he moved to Portland. I hope he is doing well. I genuinely do. But I also hope I never see him again. As for me, I have spent these months focusing on myself. I started therapy to work through the betrayal and the family fracture. I reconnected with old friends I had neglected. I threw myself into work and got a promotion. I took a solo trip to the coast and spent a week reading novels on the beach and remembering what it felt like to be just Sarah. Not Sarah, the betrayed girlfriend, or Sarah, the sister who ruined the wedding. The hardest part has not been losing Joel. It has been losing Natalie. We grew up together. We shared a lifetime of memories. But the person who could kiss her sister's boyfriend a week before her own wedding is not someone I know. Maybe she was always that person. and I just did not want to see it. Or maybe something changed in her along the way. Either way, the sister I thought I had is gone. People ask me if I regret telling Christopher. The answer is no. He deserved to know the truth. Making an informed choice about who you marry is one of the most important rights a person has. I could not take that away from him just to protect Natalie's image or keep family peace. What I have learned through all of this is that loyalty to family does not mean protecting them from the consequences of their actions. It means loving them enough to let them face the truth, even when the truth is ugly. Real love, the kind worth having, cannot exist without honesty. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is refuse to be complicit in someone's lies. I do not know if Natalie and Christopher will eventually get married. I do not know if my sister and I will ever repair our relationship. What I do know is that I made the choice I could live with. I chose integrity over comfort. I chose truth over fake peace. And while it cost me relationships, I valued it gave me something more important. It gave me back my self-respect. So here is my question for you. If you were in my position, what would you have done? Would you have told the truth or kept the secret to preserve the family? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because I would genuinely love to hear different perspectives on this. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about navigating complicated relationships and impossible choices. Share this with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for listening to my story. I know it was not an easy one, but life is not always easy, and pretending otherwise does not help anyone. I hope wherever you are in your own journey, you find the courage to choose honesty, even when it is hard. Especially when it is hard. Take care of yourselves, and remember that you deserve relationships built on truth, not convenient lies. Until next time.